I'll give the call to the Honourable Dr. Pawinder Kaur.
Thank you, Acting President. Look at the possibilities and the opportunities wherever I see problems. And we have seen in the last few debates, there has been a lot of problems raised, but more I read the budget and more I go through the details and more I look at the history of me living in this gorgeous part of the world for the last 20 years, I see that we are absolutely going in the right direction where we need to go. And I have chosen to speak about a few of my favorite topics today. And we've had a lot of debate on them, specifically the climate action, economic diversification, strategic investments into many areas, but particularly I would like to touch on the science, technology, and innovation, and the capacity building and the workforce development, because we can be investing into amazing infrastructures. We could be building white elephants in there, but if there are no people and if there's no capacity built today to deliver 10 years later, it's not going to be of any use to any of us. So what makes me really excited about this budget is that it's got a growth mindset at the heart of the policy and the practice that it would like to bring into action. This budget is investing into people, into infrastructures, and creating possibilities. And the best part of this budget that I'm most excited about is the vision of Made in WA. Specifically, if you look around yourselves and if you're hearing the news on a daily basis, while America is busy making America great again, and a lot of news, there is a huge protest that is coming up next week in all the major cities of Australia to make Australia white again. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but it's a shame. And it's also, and I would like, yesterday my honourable colleague, Marika, you've talked about, we need to take a little bit more responsibility as the members, as the representatives for Western Australians, when we talk about issues. So being a migrant, can I please request my fellow colleagues that it is very important when we talk about issues like immigration, we take a little bit more responsibility, because that is what fuels things like Make Australia White Again, things that are all over the social media at this moment, and it impacts us on a daily basis. If I may give you an example, I had somebody throw a pizza on my face while my little child was watching, and those people said, "Go back to where you come from. You are stealing our jobs." So can we please take a little bit more responsibility when we talk about things, that what consequences it could have for different people who are as Australians and who are as passionate about Western Australia and building a better country for tomorrow as anybody else in this chamber. So coming back to the budget, before we go into the nitty-gritty of different things, I would like to take a moment to reflect. We all manage our households on a daily basis. If we have $100 in a pocket, what are the very basic things that we make sure that we got covered for ourselves and our family before we start to talk about all the luxuries that we can afford in this very beautiful part of the country? The very first thing that comes to our minds is putting 2 meals a day, or if we are lucky, 3 meals a day on the plate. The second thing that comes to mind is health. We have a saying in India that if your health is on your side, you have 1,000 problems in this world. But the day your health leaves you, all the problems go away because you have only one thing that you will be focusing on. So we're very lucky that the government's invested into a long-term vision for a healthy Western Australia. As my honourable colleague Pierre Yang just mentioned, $1.8 billion. But I would also like to bring your attention to the long-term vision, and a very bipartisan in this case, because being a researcher, there's a lot of things that research fuels. Research is able to bring possibilities for a healthier tomorrow. Like today, we are celebrating Daffodil Day. It's a day for hope, which the Cancer Council is celebrating. And there are some really, really positive stats if you look at that, how many people are surviving the cancer today as compared to the 1980s. There's a lot of ways to prevent, and the awareness that has been raised by it. And there's a lot of amazing research into deadly diseases which we could have never imagined to be cured. I just heard from one of my colleagues in America this morning that they have got a vaccine for Alzheimer's, which is ready to be released next year. So this makes me very hopeful that if we invest in these solutions today, we're going to have a better tomorrow. And I would like to give a big shout out to the Cook Labour government, because it was the Cook Labour government which put in the Future Health Research and Innovation Fund, which we also call as FARI Fund, in place. It was established in 2020. This is a fund which is fueling most of the incredible research that we are leading globally right here in Western Australia. It's a long-term investment. It's not a short-term vision of years, 2 years, 4 years. It's an investment that is going to make Western Australia healthier and happier on a daily basis. So let's start with the first that I would like to share a little bit more. I worked in the biodiversity and conservation state from a genetics point of view. One of the biggest of my career was to bring down the cost of DNA mapping from $2.7 billion to $1,000. We could have used that technology in many, many, many different ways because it applies across the globe, across the tree of life. However, that was the time I learned that one species goes extinct every 20 minutes. We lose 3 species every hour. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So that's what me and my colleagues, we dedicated our technology to, and we have been working from last several years to try to bring the very basic foundational resources into place so that the research done by organizations like DBCA, which I worked very, very closely, are able to use that towards not just mapping the data, collecting the data in terms of what the problem is, but also to do some action to that problem. If you look at this budget, yes, it's not making big when it comes to climate action, but the climate change and the action is a blueprint of this entire budget. And I'll give you some examples to explain that. It's not just talking about climate action anymore. We are actually doing the work. We're building, delivering, and leading right now as we speak. This budget commits $259 million this year and another $250 million next year through the Climate Action Fund. This isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. This is investment in real and transformative action. For example, I am acting president. Can I please focus on delivering my speech?
Yes, even interjection should still address honourable members by their title. Thank you.
I would like to bring your attention to Synergy's King Rocks Wind Farm project and the Collie Battery Energy Storage project. And these are not just abstract ideas, they're proven ideas. So on the path to net zero, we're talking about how do we achieve those emissions. I myself worked on reducing the methane emissions into the environment for 10 years, right here in Western Australia as my first postdoctoral position. Methane, which is 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide, not 80 times as it was mentioned in the chamber earlier. What I learned was really interesting in the very beginning of my research into that area, that 40% of our methane emissions actually come from our agriculture. On an average daily basis, a cow releases 200 to 300 liters of methane into the environment. Sheep, which is a big industry here, it releases 20 to 30 liters of methane into the environment. We're very lucky that we had the biggest resource to tackle that problem right here in Western Australia, because for many decades, our scientists at University of Western Australia and our DPERD organization have collected germplasms across the planet. We had more than 10,000 accessions of the key Australian pasture species, which was one of the most effective ways to solve this problem. And that's the path that I took. I worked on that for 5 years. When we found the solution to the problem, we identified the suite of the genes which we could use and identify the best clover varieties to be able to solve that problem for our livestock industry, because this is the pasture species which is grown across Western Australia as one of the key food ingredients for the livestock. 2013, I received the Science and Innovation Award by the Prime Minister for this solution. And guess what happens after that? 2014, Barnett government ships all of our gene bank resources from DPERD to Saadi in South Australia. I never imagined that I'll get to share this in a chamber here at this level. But that impacted not just the solution that we were about to deliver to the livestock industry, funded through the Meat and Livestock Australia, but it made a huge impact on my career as a scientist, who dedicated 5 years, day and night, to find that solution. And the moment we were about to deliver the solution, all our genetic resources were shipped to South Australia. And then every time I needed just 1 gram of the seeds, I had to write to South Australia and wait for 3 months. I lost all of that corporate knowledge that was existing right here in Western Australia in our own deeper department, which was absolutely critical because all those technicians and those people lost their jobs following we sent all our resources to South Australia. This is the ground reality when we decide what we would like to see moving forward and what we would not like to see forward. So coming back to Collie and the net emissions, it is one of the most important things that Western Australia can do to do their bit on the net zero emissions. But it is also a huge opportunity that we have as a state when it comes to building a clean energy pathway, but also building that infrastructure that will bring more opportunities to our state. Just imagine if we are able to build world's biggest battery in Collie, what we are able to do for the future of our state. You all hear about data centers. We are all generating a lot of data these days. Every moment you're on social media, you're taking photographs or you're doing any research or analyzing anything. We are all creating data, and data is becoming data centers are becoming one of the highest consuming points of energy at this moment. So just imagine if we've got one of the greenest battery or the biggest battery built here in Collie, we will be able to attract the biggest investments happening in the data industry. We could be building the greenest data centers right here in Western Australia, and what does that translate in terms of jobs and the future opportunities for our kids tomorrow? That's what makes me excited. So I'm really happy to see that we're backing that vision with $584 million to unlock wind generation north of Perth and expand renewable generation, enabling the planned shutdown of coal-fired power stations by 2030. $337 million for the residential battery scheme, helping tens of thousands of households and store solar power and secure WA's energy future. $50 million to support local battery manufacturing, making the energy technologies of tomorrow right here in Western Australia. In addition, this budget allocates $179 million for decarbonisation works, $102 million to expand the wind farms, and $32 million to help Collie transition from emissions-intensive industries, ensuring that no one is left behind. That's a very thought-through budget. I did some calculations at the back of an envelope just to share with you all that what an impact that Western Australia can make. So just as an example, in 2022, the iron and steel sector contributed approximately 8% to national emissions. And adopting green manufacturing processes could reduce emissions by 80% in this sector. And with Australia's total emissions at approximately 500 million tons of carbon dioxide annually, and the steel sector contributing 40 million tons of carbon dioxide, green manufacturing alone could reduce emissions by 32 million tons carbon dioxide. And this reduction equates to 6.4% decrease in Australia's total emissions, or about 1.6 times the total emissions from the iron and steel sector currently. So that's a huge impact that Western Australia can make. And it's quite within the reach with the investments that I see in this budget. We are on the verge of a transformative shift in its energy sector and poised to become a global leader in clean energy innovation. But for that, we need to embrace a bold vision and set ambitious goals and deploying innovative technologies to spearhead its energy transition. That's why we are also fast-tracking environmental approvals, because good policy backed by good science must be met with urgency. And while we often speak about climate action in context of emissions and megawatts, let me bring it back to the land. That while studying and serving agricultural communities, I've seen it throughout my career very, very closely and firsthand, that how droughts can hollow out towns and how changing weather patterns disrupt harvests and how water scarcity reshapes entire regions. That's why this budget invests in critical natural resource protection, which includes 8.5 million for the Peel-Harvey Estuary Protection Plan, 5 million for the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Water Bank Project, 4.2 million to update water plans in the Pilbara, and 63 million to prevent and respond to biosecurity threats. It is really important. And it is lovely to see a fruit fly-free Western Australia, because it impacts a lot of industries. It impacts our farmers and where we can export and where we cannot export. So a huge kudos to the DPERD and Minister Jackie Jarvis for leading this and taking a lot of interest in this area. And it's not just biosecurity the way we've always done it, because things are moving really, really fast. Climate change, on a daily basis, things are evolving. So are the insects, so are the pests, and so are our current varieties that we have got into the fields. So the biosecurity needs to catch up. We need to be able to deploy all these latest technologies to be able to do things more efficiently, whether you talk about money or you talk about resources or you talk about timing. Because we've seen in COVID that how we can fast track these innovative technologies and how much it can save us, not just in terms of the monetary terms, but also in terms of the efficiency and the time it requires. So we are actually investing into that to bring it up to speed. So we are not behind in these areas. And that is why there is a huge allocation to biosecurity. Through the 350 million softwood plantation expansion fund, we are creating carbon sinks, supporting jobs in the regions and backing a more sustainable timber industry. It's important because somehow governments all around the globe have taken a lot of time to realize that climate change is a real thing. And while it has happened and now finally the debate has stopped about a decade ago, it's very, very hard to move a ship which is going in one direction to the another direction without sinking it. Things like this and matters complex at this depth cannot be solved in one day. And I know everybody in this chamber, whichever side we are, agree with that. And that is something I found really frustrating, that we've heard so many replies and everybody has had a chance. This is a house of review. I have done reviewing of the scientific work all my life. And when we used to review something, we always used to give solutions in terms of, okay, fine, I do not agree with this because, and what can we do to improve this piece of work so that what we will build on is a better place to build on things. I'm sorry to say, but I did not see many solutions despite of the level of the intellect and the wisdom in this room. And I would love to challenge us all to use our time debating, coming up with solutions, rather than only speaking to the problems. This budget also supports the health of our oceans and ecosystems. Remember, I'm not taking interjections at this moment. 5 million for the Healthy Ocean Fund, backing seagrass restoration and marine research. And this is work that is absolutely amazing happening at our universities here in Western Australia. I would like to give a shout out to Seeds of Snapper Project. Professor Gary Kendrick has been leading this from several years, and that has made a significant improvement in the health of our oceans. 17 million to expand rebates and urban canopy programs, creating cooler and greener suburbs. 20 million to expand the Aboriginal Ranger program, supporting cultural land and sea management. And that is something that is absolutely required, that we do not talk about the First Nations knowledge as a separate. It's at the heart of the things that we do. I would like to share a small story with all of you regarding the Aboriginal and the First Nations knowledge and the richness of it. 5 years back, I was doing the world's first DNA map for quokka, specifically from a point of view that why we have a problem with the population and the survival of our mainland quokkas versus the caucus. I spent a day with Ranger Dave on the Rottnest Island just trying to understand the very foundation of why the caucus populations are declining and what is the biggest threat. And when I went to the Rottnest Island, my first thing in my mind was, we are the biggest enemies to the caucus. It's the humans, everything to do with the humans. But I learned from Dave that day, it's not the humans as much as it is the ravens. They are the biggest threat to the caucus on the Rottnest Island, and that has been also been one of the key factors on the mainland, on top of some of the diseases that they have to face, which they do not on the Rottnest Island because they have evolved with those bacteria on the Rottnest Island, whereas the mainland species haven't had an opportunity. But cut the long story short, it was really, really interesting to see Ranger Dave recognizing the caucus by, they have names for them. He could even tell me that Joey belonged to which mum, because that's another problem in the caucus, that as soon as they sense threat, they can't run fast enough, save themselves, so they drop the Joey and they run. However, the poor Joey cannot go into any other mum's pouch. So that was a huge problem that I saw as another threat to the caucus, that the Joeys would not survive. So when I went to Ranger Dave's office, he had 6 or 7 Joeys, which he was trying to feed with a milk bottle, but it wasn't working. So, and then he told me that he actually recognizes, and there is a point where he will take the Joeys in the evening and he'll be able to give them back to the mums. And that's when I developed an AI a face recognition program for caucus, and I can tell you that AI was not able to do it as well as Ranger Dave was able to do.
Every parent feels like that.
But that day I learned that how amazing that knowledge and rich that knowledge is, and why we need to learn more from the traditional owners of this country. So I'm really excited to see this investment programs like Aboriginal Ranger programs. Another 750,000 for Plastic-Free July, turning community enthusiasm into real environmental outcomes. It is really, really important. Programs are like this raise awareness at a level that where our kids can connect with them and they can actually meaningfully contribute to programs like this. Not just contribute, but we need to raise awareness in ways that our next generation is able to connect better with the environment. And what's better than the investments in the infrastructures so that we can enjoy this most beautiful part of the planet and connect better with it. So the investments of 100 million for essential infrastructure upgrades on Rottnest Island and to revitalize Beachhead and Fremantle, improving access to one of WA's most loved destinations. 21 million to enhance boating, campgrounds, trails, and maritime facilities, building on last year's 165 million outdoor adventure packages. Since 2017, the Cook Labour government has created over 6.5 million hectares of new national parks, marine parks, and nature reserves, a legacy of conservation for generations to come. The work that has been achieved on the Dirk Hartog Island is absolutely phenomenal. I've had the opportunity to work with the native marsupials in there and help the DBCA have a better plan of action when it comes to their survival on that island. And through the Containers for Change program, more than 3 billion containers have been diverted from landfill since 2020. Now we are preparing to expand the scheme to wine and spirit bottles because it's Australia and because progress never stops. So this isn't just climate action, it's regional resilience, it's economic renewal, and it's a vision of a greener, fairer, more prosperous Western Australia, and this budget is a step forward in building it. It's always a good idea to have a strong economic base because we can only evolve and and manage situations when problems come our way, like COVID did, if we have a little bit of resource and money saved for that rainy day. So Western Australia's economic diversification and building a resilient future is a step forward, which I welcome with both arms. We are very lucky to have an economy that has always drawn strength from its natural resources. But we know that future demands more than digging and shipping. The next chapter of WA's story must be about building innovative and manufacturing a more resilient, future-focused economy. And that is why we're going to need the best and the brightest in this world to come and help us on this journey. And that is why I request that when we talk about immigration issues, we pay a little bit more attention to that, because we're not creating a very good perception about Western Australia, welcoming those best and brightest to come and help us on this journey. But I'm glad to see that this budget recognizes that truth and rises to meet it. At the heart of this plan is a bold visionary commitment, doubling the Strategic Industries Fund to $1 billion. For me, that's a game changer, because it has the ambition to deliver on the vision for Made in WA. That may not look very fancy at this moment or very appealing at this moment, because it's a lot of wires, poles, those kind of infrastructure. But this is something that we are going to absolutely require. If we are going to go and settle in Collie and work there, we are going to require that person to be able to access technology same way as we access it right here in the urban areas. So the $1 billion Strategic Industries Fund will unlock critical and infrastructure across our state's most important industrial zones, from Pilbara to Midwest, from goldfields to the Southwest, and the Western trade coast. And these areas will become the launch pads for clean energy we just talked about, advanced manufacturing, defense industries, and downstream processes. Industries that will define the next generation of Western Australian jobs. And this investment will make us globally competitive. It will ensure that WA is not just a resource economy, but a smart, sustainable, and a sovereign one. The fund is already delivering support for new developments in Bunbury, Kwinana, and other regions, with investments in road upgrades and enabling infrastructures to attract innovative businesses. And the establishment of the Southwest Advanced Manufacturing and Technology Hub in Picton, which will house one of Western Power's key poles and wires manufacturing facilities, decentralizing opportunity and bringing high-skilled jobs to regional Western Australia. And this is not just a theory, it's a proven practice, and I've got a number of examples that I would like to share with you guys around the world where the governments are leveraging special economic zones, free economic zones, and targeted industrial precincts to drive transformative economic growth. These zones, underpinned by supportive infrastructure, incentives, and coordinated policy, are attracting billions in foreign direct investments, creating skilled jobs, attracting those best and the brightest in the world to their regions to help them build their next economies, fostering innovation and enhancing national economic resilience.
Order, member.
Thank you, President. So before the question time, we were talking about the economic diversification and why it is so important for Western Australia, and the ambitious plan of future that is made in Western Australia. The government
Order, members. There's a little bit too much noise in the chamber for the member to continue her contribution. If you could keep it at a very low hum. The Honourable Parwinder Kaur.
Thank you, President. And we were talking about doubling the Strategic Industries Fund to $1 billion and why that matters to achieve the ambitious goal that we have set ourselves for in terms of future that is made in WA. I mentioned this fund that is already delivering the support for new developments in Bunbury, Kwinana, and other regions, and the establishment of the Southwest Advanced Manufacturing and Technology Hub in Picton. And that is something, not just a theory. It has been achieved similar ways in many different parts of the world. And I would like to share some examples in terms of how the governments have leveraged special economic zones, free economic zones, and the targeted industrial precincts to drive transformative economic growth, which has been underpinned by supportive infrastructure, incentives, and a coordinated policy, the way we are doing it as we speak. And one of the closest examples is our closest neighbor, Indonesia. Indonesia's approach to industrial growth and clean energy through the development of special economic zones like Batam and Kendal industrial parks have attracted billions of dollars in foreign direct investment. These zones are not just industrial estates, they are clean energy and advanced manufacturing hubs backed by strategic government planning, infrastructure, investment, and incentives. And building on these models, similar models, governments have enabled opportunities for the future workforce in their country and what they can achieve. Singapore transformed Jurong Island into a global petrochemical and clean energy innovation cluster by investing early in industrial-ready infrastructures. And today it hosts some of the world's leading firms in advanced materials, hydrogen research, and sustainable fuels. And this demonstrates that how long-term planning can anchor high-value industries and position nations at the forefront of the clean energy solutions, something that we need to urgently do. Another interesting example is from Germany, where they have built the momentum through the hydrogen valleys and specialized economic zones, and demonstrated that how coordinated infrastructure investment and regulatory support can decarbonize heavy industry. I'm really excited that we are the very first state in Australia to have a science and technology plan, a 10-year science and technology plan. And while we were developing that science and technology plan last year, there has been a lot of engagement in terms of learning from these global ventures. The Fraunhofer Institutes from Germany and how we can actually utilize the same model to transform how we use our research capacity in our world-leading universities right here in Western Australia into delivering solutions that are most required by our industries. It is a huge achievement. We're the only state to have a 10-year science and technology plan. And we are the only state to have a roadmap with which we can evolve before anybody else can take those high-value industries. Another example I would like to share with you guys is how India has built and risen in terms of one of the powers in the world when it comes to economic diversification and building the most amazing unicorns and the startup ecosystem in that country. 3 years back, I had an opportunity to travel with the Premier, Roger Cook, on one of the world's biggest, one of Australia's biggest delegation with more than 120 businesses. We were really trying to understand that we have some of the most cutting-edge research happening here, but why we are not able to translate all of that into all those ideas into products. This is, again, some on the back of the envelope calculations that I did during that trip to understand and unpack that question a little bit more. It's really important to have end-to-end ecosystems to be able to deliver something similar to what we are trying to achieve through our Kensington Technology Park and the newly announced medical precinct we are building. Because when somebody wants to invest into an idea, they would like to see a product come through that. It's very important for an investor to be able to see an idea translate into a product, going through that chain and not have to go through 3 different geographical locations or deal with 3 different government policies and regulatory operations. And that is something that India achieved beautifully to deliver that end-to-end ecosystem. One of the most interesting examples we saw was Hydrogen Genome Valley, where the COVID vaccine was not just developed, but also delivered to the entire country. And the entire chain was achieved in just one precinct. I have been a founder of a startup, and I have tried to achieve that here in Western Australia. But as we all understand, because of our location, there are so many advantages, but at the same time, the cost of doing business and research in Western Australia is always higher than our counterparts in eastern states and other parts of the world. And that is why it's only us who need to take care of this and build those ecosystems. So in Hyderabad Genome Valley, they've enabled 16% guaranteed return on investment. 16% return on investment guaranteed And because of that, they were able to attract some of the biggest super funds from Canada to invest into those ventures. And you know how they delivered 16% return on investments? Because a fully functional lab was costing $1 per square meter. Can never achieve that in here. And these are the things that's where we really need to be visionary. We need to be able to build those infrastructures. We need to be able to deliver those precincts like we are looking forward to deliver the medical precinct, the Kensington Technology Parks, the biggest telescopes in the world through our square kilometer array project, which has been enabled by the previous investments by the federal and the state government into building one of the biggest and world's fourth greenest supercomputer, the Posey Supercomputing Center. These are the very foundation infrastructures that are required to build the future made in Western Australia. And with that, I would like to commend this budget to the House and to the people of Western Australia. Thank you very much.